Guys, we're going to take a look around Amory a little bit today. Why don't you come along with us? Let's go explore. It's hard to talk about Amory and not talk about the railroad. This is a picture of what is supposed to be the first train to arrive in Amory, probably sometimes in 1887 or early 1888. In the latter decades of the 19th century, several prominent businessmen shared a dream that someday Kansas City would be the starting point for a railroad. This railroad would connect Kansas City with Memphis and then would extend on to Birmingham. Even though the South was financially destitute, General Nathan Bedford Forrest tried to raise money to improve or extend the Frisco Railroad across Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama. This plan failed because of lack of funds, and after General Forrest's death in 1877, the project remained dormant for some time. You are now entering Frisco Park from behind the stage area. In 1885, General George H. Nettleton of Kansas City, Missouri, along with the backing of some Boston capitalists named Harcourt Amory and Eugene Thayer, they all succeeded in buying the right-of-way necessary to construct the railroad, later known as the Kansas City, Memphis, and Birmingham. The Kansas City, Memphis, and Birmingham Railroad bought a large tract of land from Mrs. Amanda Owen. Railroad officials had the land surveyed and staked off into building lots. 3 lots were reserved to be donated to churches, and an additional space was allocated for a school building. Officials of the new railroad had chosen the site for the new town because it marked the halfway point between Memphis and Birmingham. This made the site ideal for use as a relay station and a turn station. Amory did not just happen, for it was carefully planned. Main Street was designed to run parallel with the railroad, which runs north and south, with Main Street lying on the east side. The residential area originally planned to lie east of Main Street. On November the 15th, 16th, and 17th in 1887, lots were auctioned in the carefully platted town. Many of these lots were purchased by citizens of Cotton Gin Port. They saw that the establishment of this new railroad center would doom the historic river town to eventual extinction. Most of the business people at Cotton Gin Port, along with most all of their citizens, moved to Amory, bringing all of their possessions. Some moved their businesses and their houses, rolling them over to the new town on logs, while others took the buildings down and rebuilt them in Amory. Amory, Mississippi was chartered on February the 2nd, 1888, and it was incorporated on March the 20th, 1888. Robert Lowry, who was the governor of Mississippi, appointed J.W. Wright as Amory's first mayor. In the first meeting of his board of aldermen, the mayor was authorized to receive bids for the erection of a jail. Just like in other pioneer towns, a lawless element moved into the community. Local legend has it that several saloons lined the muddy streets, and it wasn't uncommon for a drunken group of young guys to ride up and down Main Street on Saturday nights, shooting up the town. It was even said that drunkenness, public gambling, and all other types of lawlessness were the rule rather than the exception. Let's get back to railroad history in Amory. In 1926, Frisco purchased 30 of the 482 configuration type locomotives from Baldwin Locomotive Works of Philadelphia. The 482 was a way to classify steam locomotives by wheel arrangement. Frisco 1529 had the distinction of being the very last 482 mountain-type locomotive built by Baldwin for the Frisco Railway in 1926. The price tag was $69,586. The St. Louis-San Francisco Railway bought a total of 30 482s from Baldwin Locomotive Works to be used in passenger service. 15 were delivered in 1923, 5 came in 25, and a final 10 arrived in 26. All of these locomotives weighed 56,800 pounds apiece. On November 18, 1934, it was a beautiful day as Frisco Engine 1529 made a stop in Amory during its trip from Washington, D.C. to Tupelo. This was the special train of the 32nd President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He spoke to a crowd of about 15,000 as he spoke from the back of the train platform. President Roosevelt said that this was his first visit to North Mississippi, and he was coming back. He called the state a pioneer in the field of electrical development and remarked that other states and communities were standing by watching the wonderful work and that someday the entire country would follow suit. The arrival of diesel power in the late 1940s caused most of the original 30 Frisco Railroad mountain locomotives to either be retired or scrapped. Frisco 1529's final accolade would be that it was the last steam engine to make a passenger run for Frisco. On October 29, 1953, over 5,000 people showed up to celebrate the gift of Frisco 1529 from the Frisco Railroad to the city of Amory. They would also witness the dedication of the new $200,000 Amory Division office building of the Frisco Railroad. The owners of the railroad built a hotel on the corner of the block south of the park on Front Street, where you're looking now. They had some difficulty in keeping a store manager, and sometime around 1889 or 1890, Mr. Schutte, an experienced hotel man, arrived in Amory to take over the management of the hotel. Coming up, you'll see the first residence in Amory. It was built by Mr. J.A. Mayfield. As we take a ride down present-day Main Street, you'll see this section of block where there was a store occupied by Mr. T.J. and Ed Gilmore. T.J. died soon after coming to Amory, but before his death, he and his brother Ed opened Amory's first bank. This, to my knowledge, is probably the oldest commercial building left standing in present-day Amory. The first school building in Amory was built by the city and was a 4-room frame building erected on the lot where the Presbyterian Church now stands. A large study hall ran down the center of the building. Professor E.E. Cowley was the first principal in 1890, and he continued in this capacity until 1905. Even though the first school building may have been built on this site, the first school in Amory was taught by Miss Rosa Ruff in a room adjoining the law office of James Burkett. Pupils paid a tuition of $1 a month, and Miss Ruff was given room and board in the home of Mr. Burkett. A few years after Amory received its charter, all the records were burned, so much of the information that we have about the early years is based on memory. Community leaders and railroad officials knew that no town would be permanent unless it was built around schools and churches. This is First United Methodist Church you see here. The Reverend Whitehurst was the first pastor of the Methodist Church, and it was organized in 1888 with about 40 members. The present-day First Baptist Church that you see here was probably organized in the same year in 1888. It had around 20 charter members, and they were sitting on beams of a hotel that was being constructed at the time. As we pass by the present-day post office, we'll remind you that early life in Amory was reportedly kind of hard. It was said that it was built on the marshiest of land. It was not an unusual sight on Main Street to see buggies mired in mud almost up to the hubcaps. Individual landowners began to build plank sidewalks, and the town was soon filling in the gaps. As I said a little earlier, E.D. Gilmore was a successful businessman. He had a great mercantile business, and his bank prospered. He had many other ventures that allowed him to form long-term relationships with strong partners who cast their own mark on Amory. Gilmore Foundation was created in 1915 and incorporated in 1916. The foundation's initial goal was to construct a medical facility in Amory. The original hospital, the forerunner of Gilmore Memorial Hospital, was officially opened on December 1st, 1916. It was the first modern medical center in the entire Northeast Mississippi. It was located on a 26-acre farm in what was then South Amory. Mrs. Gilmore gave it the unique architecture from a drawing that she prepared. It was described in a newspaper on September 1916 by a visiting physician as being unsurpassed for a hospital of its size. The original structure had about 22 beds, an operating room, and a laboratory. A local newspaper in a report about the dedication of the sanatorium said, Ellie Gilmore, backed by the inspiration of a noble and unselfish wife, has made his adopted city a medical center. The paper went on to say he is tireless in initiative and enterprise. Why wait until he is dead to praise him? Gilmore Sanatorium houses present-day Amory Regional Museum and is a great place to visit. We hope you've enjoyed your visit with us through Amory today. Thank you, and come visit yourself sometime.